So I think around 2 years ago, I got an email from Vika, who is the director of Yorkshire Dance, saying, can we meet? She asked me what I found troublesome in dance, what were the issues, what were the main problems. And I thought about that for a while. And of course I care very much about dance, but my response to the question was, I prefer to think about what are the issues in the world and what could dance and choreography's response to that be. So my interest at the moment is on choreographic works made by professional choreographers and presented in professional scenarios like Juncture, but where some of the work of the artistic act is handed over to people who don't call themselves professional dance makers of different kinds.
This particular programme really has brought a certain kind of politics to the fore, where clearly the agenda has been about thinking about this idea of community dance in order, in a sense, to break through it and move through that to something else.
In assembly, I was interested in how it might be possible to bring together conventions of viewing in a theatre and conventions of viewing in an art gallery. And so the piece has a kind of, in some ways it's a hybrid of those two forms. It takes on qualities of the gallery because it runs for a long time. There is no fixed start, middle and end. Spectators can arrive when they wish, they can watch the piece as long as they want, they can leave when they want. But also the room that it is performed in has a line of tape on the floor, and spectators are one side and performers are the other. And in that sense, it kind of creates a theatre just by having this one simple divide.
So I thought it's nice to go into a space and just be able to stay for as long as you like and watch things happening, and it's quite calming. It's like being in a gallery actually looking at paintings. It's got something of that atmosphere to it because you just kind of hang out, and even within the kind of small movements and small interactions between the performers and the audience, there's like subtle communication. There's lots of, they're smiling at us and they're kind of doing ordinary everyday movements, but that becomes quite fascinating in a way. And then also there's a kind of game at play, and after being in the space for quite some time you start to realise that something is triggering something else. So someone's coming in when someone goes out, or someone's going out when someone comes in, and different people are kind of aligned. So different performers are leaving the space when the person that came in the door, that same person leaves the space. So then when you've watched that happen for quite a period of time, it gets quite intriguing.
So it makes kind of mirror between the performers and the audience. And at some point, as they're standing or sitting and watching you as you're watching them, you feel like you're part of the performance as well.
We had a whole section of work that we were doing which was around a festival we do, which was about recruiting collaborators to take part in the project. What that invitation was to the collaborators, and to the fine points of how the ethics around that, how we frame the invitation and the language that people are not participants, they are collaborators.
It's also a chance for us to think both really deeply about what it means to have non-professionals involved in artistic labour, but it's also a chance for us to maybe get past it and see each individual work for the theatrical interest, the intellectual drive, the formal fun or innovation for other things that make each work itself.
So it was kind of like a collision of many ideas all at the same time. And one of those was I've been working on my own for like almost 7 years and was getting a bit of isolation issues. And was just really curious about how I felt I wanted bodies with me in the space. And I'd been, you know, encountering a lot of visual art, a lot of sculptural work that had organised objects in a really interesting way. And I sort of thought, well, what would happen, you know, if you organised bodies like that? And then I was also at the same time duration. I was interested in, prior to that I'd made very short work, and I suppose as a reaction to that I wanted to look at making long work and what are the conditions for that. And what was, I think, important to mention is my desire to have intimacy and proximity in sharing my ideas, so that as a mover or as a dancer, it's like you're doing this because I want to share my ideas, I want to translate my ideas out to you, to the witness, to the spectator. So come close and read me and inquire about the surface that's moving in front of you. So all those things sort of dropped into focus at the same time. And hence Swarm Sculptures was born.
It was hypnotic and quite mesmerising, listening to the music, floating around the space and then coming together. And yeah, quite emotional. Yeah, I felt really human. It was beautiful. Yeah, very special.
Yeah, I think it fills the room with a really strong sense of cooperation that doesn't require discussion. It's just negotiated at a really, really simplistic level that's quite powerful, I guess.
I'm always interested in that relationship between virtuosity and dilettantism, I guess, the ways in which we can enjoy and admire great skill and at the same time we can see something incredibly resonant in the performance of experience that might come from the body or the voice that isn't trained to do that. So we're presenting a piece of work at Juncture called Wallflower, which is, I guess in a sense, it's a piece of theatre about dancing and a piece of dancing about theatre. At the beginning of the process, I asked the performers to pursue a particular task, and I set them the task of trying to remember every dance they've ever danced. It's going back across their entire lives.
I would like to be able to do that. We average 22 dances per hour, so we're going to do every dance back to back without stopping. We'll be dancing for 68 hours.
Something like Wallflower as a sort of task-based piece, I think something that people who watch it, that they say to us is that they can imagine themselves doing it. There's an implicit invitation that this is something that you could do. The politics of that is something that's very important to me.
The way there was space in the show was dense, but there was also like whole tracks where, you know, we were just left to listen, and that listening space, when there isn't action on stage, it's amazing how quickly the audience's attention ripples to ourselves. Become self-conscious, but then that sort of dies down, and then there's just like a heightened kind of an awareness and sensitivity maybe, and then it's just kind of reflection. It's like an emotional soundboard.
I think we often describe our work as creating the circumstances for a conversation amongst strangers. So we think about how can we set up that the context for that kind of unexpected encounter.
I suppose what I really loved about it was this sort of democratic feeling in the atmosphere, something about the way everyone was entitled to be on a stage, and in some quite interesting way that kind of shut down a gap between what was happening on stage and the people watching it, and it was like a divide sort of got dissolved somehow, which was not an entirely unique experience, not entirely new, but felt spread across the whole of a festival, felt really sort of refreshing and unusual, and that was really exciting.
So the show is called Mine, and it's a piece that was commissioned from choreograph.net and Dagda Dance Company, which were based in Ireland a couple of years ago. So they asked me and Emma to create a choreography for the internet, and what we decided to do was to get in contact with 4 Irish women from different ages, so from ages of 8 to 63, and then over around 4 months we interacted with them online on the choreograph.net website, gave them questions and tasks relating to their own lives in dance, and then they fed back to us through written text and video and song. And then at the end of the entire process, we edited down all their responses into a choreographic score, which we now perform and which we'll perform on Friday.
The choreography and the performance practice that we're using is an opportunity for me to kind of decondition or like take away the social choreography, so the ways in which I will edit my movement, my interactions with people outside of a performance space. When I'm performing naked and I have this particular performance practice and this score, which is about giving voice to the experience of women of Ireland, it just makes sense to me to use that space as a voice to say, well, this is what my body looks like. This is what a woman's body looks like in this context. And it seems to kind of ask people if the ways in which they're conditioned to see female bodies are true and relevant.
It's given me a lot of food for thought about the gaze and about people's responsibility. So there were many, sort of multiple readings of women's bodies and how women are often objectified. So yeah, a very thought-provoking piece and very beautifully performed.
I think we've always been interested in trying to play with that relationship and with those boundaries between what is seen as being some of the terms are really troublesome: amateur or professional, trained or untrained. They're really insufficient terms. So if we pay someone and continue to pay them, does that make them a professional? Who knows?
I've done it with dance students. I did some research completely with dance professionals and then with people with no experience whatsoever. And I think I prefer the kind of non-professional attitude to this work, or a kind of mixed group. It's really important that there's a mixed, diverse group actually in order for it to work.
We are here to rework or make a new version of our old work, Laura Laura, and here we're doing the Laura Laura double penetration with 2 non-performers who have joined us for us this week to make their version of the piece.
It's a dance performance that seems to be about breaking the rules about dance, so it's been quite nerve-wracking because we are not professional dancers, and it also involves karaoke, which I'd forgotten how much I dislike.
So inviting another duo to perform our score was a way, to give us some insight, maybe?
It was an edge, a massive edge, it's kind of like, how do I perform in front of people? How do I dance in front of people when I'm not always comfortable in my body? What does it mean to be seen?
One of the first lines in the performance is, "We don't give a fuck." And actually it's been quite a quick lesson in having not to, because you just can't get this right. They do, in a way, but we can't. We make them look really good.
Yeah, and it's been strange to negotiate that with also being a performer yourself. Like, we also need to prepare for the work and find a space to make it whatever it needs to be this time. And then to work it alongside this other version of it with these other 2 people.
So what it means to allow myself the space to be seen, not good enough, it's really quite, and hold that. And I left Thursday's performance with a smile on my face, just pleasing myself that I'd put the saddle on the horse, even though I was scared anyway.
Dancing on My Own is a short film where I invited 20 people to dance to their favourite song in front of the camera. The film also contains the sound from audio interviews with the participants, where we had a dialogue around their relationship to the song and how it kind of moves them on both a physical and an emotional level. By inviting individuals to dance or move in front of the camera, I guess I'm interested in exploring contexts where the private and the public kind of merges, and how that context then informs how one chooses to represent oneself. The work also takes a closer look at our relation to music, because I'm very fascinated by music in its power to kind of aggravate something in us through a very direct manner. So by using music and inviting people to bring their own preference of music, it was also a way to enter and transition into a dialogue about, about experiences and individual stories.
I think Juncture probably accesses many different kinds of community. So I think there is the immediate dance community, the local, sort of geographically local community that Juncture relates to, both in terms of the period of events, but also before and after. So I've been in Leeds a lot and I've met lots of local artists and I've been talking to them a lot about their work and what I think Juncture could be. And hopefully afterwards there'll be a continued relationship with these ideas, or with me, because I really like it here and I'd like to spend more time in Leeds. I think there are also communities that have been addressed through the participation elements of Juncture. So some of those are student communities, for example, who meet maybe in a different way at Juncture. This morning I was meeting with Kirsty and Vika and they were saying, so how do you feel about it? And I sort of said, I don't know, it still feels, and now I'm thinking about it, it's because it doesn't feel done. It doesn't feel done. I'm still in conversation with Yorkshire Dance. I still feel like I'm going to see them soon and we're going to talk about similar things and we're going to carry on the conversation. I think that working on Juncture has been one of the most generative things I've ever done. It has allowed me to think new thoughts that otherwise I wouldn't have been able to think. There wouldn't have been the conditions to have the realisations that I've had about things that I'm interested in. And that is a gift.